Hi, welcome to the Qbix Platform. I'm Greg Magershak, and in this tutorial, I'm going to show you how to install the Qbix Platform on your own computer and get started making apps. Well, I hope you're having a great day. So let's begin. First of all, this is the website for the Qbix Platform, qbix.com/platform. And if you go to this menu here, you can get a lot of information online. So for example, you could read about all the features of the platform. You could see the tutorials like this one, architecture diagrams. The guide is probably where you're going to spend most of your time looking things up. It's a deep dive into the platform that explains every feature that you might want to use. And finally, you have the detailed reference of every function that you might use. So if you're using a function, you want to look it up, you can either go to the code or you can check it out in the PHP reference if it's PHP function. For the client-side JavaScript in your browser, you'd use this. And if you're using Node.js, you'd go here. All right. First off, you're going to need the following things. PHP. This is required. The Qbix Platform is built in PHP at the very least, and if you don't have this, then you can't run it. So the backend runs in PHP. You're going to need a database. MySQL is recommended. You can also use MariaDB, which is compatible. It's an open source fork of MySQL. Either one of those is fine, and later we plan to support Postgres and other data stores as well. But for now, you're going to need PHP and MySQL. So go ahead and install those. By the way, if you need time to do any of these steps, simply pause the video. You can always rewind, pause, and go over it again. Okay. Finally, you have Node.js. Node.js is optional, but we highly recommend it. Node.js is for real-time things, like, for example, sending offline notifications to people's phones, emails, and SMS, or sending chat messages to people who are online. All right. Once you've installed this, you can develop apps. On the front end, your users are going to use a browser to connect to your app. You can also develop native apps that you can put in the stores using PhoneGap. And this uses kind of like a browser environment, but it can also connect to your address book and stuff like that. And Qbix actually has support for this out of the box. Now, jQuery is optional. Qbix Platform doesn't require it. However, many plugins and many things that are built on Qbix Platform wind up requiring jQuery. So you might as well, it comes bundled with the platform and it comes with your apps. But feel free to replace it with a light version of jQuery if you want to have smaller files or something like that. The platform itself tries to be very efficient and compact. Finally, there's Socket.io. Like Node.js, it's optional. It's installed automatically if you have Node.js. Essentially, it helps to send real-time messages to chat rooms over sockets. All right. So the Qbix Platform is open source, and it can be found on github.com/qbix/platform. Yeah, I know. Very surprising. Okay, so the first thing that you'd want to do, essentially, is clone this repository. So you do git clone, and then you just type github.com/qbix/platform. That should pull down all the code onto your computer. Now, the Qbix Platform works on Macs, Windows, Linux, and many other, operating systems that support PHP and MySQL. It's been tested on those three, but it should also work on other ones. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out. Okay, this tutorial is going to be done on a Mac, but if you have Windows, you probably have something similar, but with backslashes instead of slashes and so forth. All right, now we've just got this folder, so let's see what's inside. In here we have the license. Just a brief word about that. The Qbix Platform is completely open source. It's under the AGPL, a Affero GPL license. What that means essentially is that you can use this code however you want. You have all the freedoms to do whatever you like with it, and you can build derivative products on it. In fact, we encourage you to build apps on top of this platform, apps and plugins for communities to install. The only thing is, if you want to distribute your app, you must give the same freedoms to everybody else. So that means you have to open source your app and your plugin for everybody else. We want to build a large community ecosystem where any community, be it a university or a cruise ship or a village, can install apps that help their community get together, communicate, and stuff like that over a common platform. If, on the other hand, you want to keep your source closed, then contact us and we might give you a special license. All right. So my app is the template we're going to use. We're going to copy that and make our own app, basically using this template. Now you can start your apps from scratch, but this just helps you to get started more quickly. The README, you could read it. It's on GitHub. Here's where the whole platform is located. It's inside this directory. And this is instructions to Node to install the packages that Qbix depends on. So if you have Node.js, which is highly recommended, simply use the Node Package Manager, and you do npm install. And that goes to town, basically installing a bunch of dependencies, like I said, for sending SMSs, sending emails. It uses Twilio, for example, but it could use another service if you want. Sending real-time notifications to iOS and so forth. All right, let me tell you a joke. Oh, it's done. That was the joke. All right, next. So now let's open. All right, so the first thing I'm going to do is let's open this in TextMate. Now, if you're using another text editor, your favorite text editor, use that. But if you don't have a favorite text editor, use TextMate. Okay, so what do we have here? We have the My App. This is kind of going to be the template for your apps. And the platform. Now, if you notice, a lot of the folder structure is the same. And that's intentional. What happens is, first of all, every developer, hopefully you won't change this folder structure very much, so that if you hire a developer that's familiar with the Qbix platform, or you are a developer that's familiar with the Qbix platform, you can pretty much find your way around any app, any plugin, and you'll see where everything is. You'll kind of already expect. There's not a lot of magic in the Qbix platform. Everything is pretty explicit. So if you want to find the config files, for example, they're in here for the app, for the platform. So what happens is that these directories kind of get merged together at runtime. So you've got your core platform, then you've got your plugins, and every plugin, by the way, has the same directory structure. Okay, and then they all get merged together. So if you look for a file, it tries to load a file, it first looks in your app. Then if it can't find it, it looks through all the plugins, kind of in the reverse order that they've been loaded, and then finally it looks in the core. If it still can't find the file, well, then the file is missing. But it's a cascading file system, and that's how plugins and apps kind of override each other and they work. Okay, so that's one thing. Let's get started. In this tutorial, I'm just going to do a few steps. I'm not going to explain very much because you could always look at the guide. Okay, so first of all, the first thing I'm going to have to do is indicate where the Qbix platform is located. I do this before copying my app so that each new app I start will know where the platform is. So in this case, it's actually in tutorials platform/platform. It's in here. It's this folder. So I'm going to copy that. This happens to be a JavaScript file. And this one happens to be the PHP file that tells the PHP scripts where it is. All right, so we're actually good to go. We are now going to copy the My App into to make a new app. All right, this is exciting. Maybe. Is it? Is it exciting? Okay, let's do this. So My App, we're going to make an app. Throughout these tutorials, we're going to build an actual app which by the time you see this is probably going to be in the store, and making money. So hopefully this will inspire you. So we're going to make an app for teachers. We're going to call it Teaching. And communities like schools will be able to install it and have teachers give their lesson plans and invite students, and everybody will have roles and permissions to access different things. It's going to be cool. We might even have parents on this thing. All right, so we start this teaching app. We've copied it. So if we go back here, you're going to see this thing, right? Now let's go quickly through these folders. Notice none of these have been checked into version control. So you're probably going to want to work on a team. And even if you don't, you need to keep track of what you're doing. So you use version control. In our case, we like to use Mercurial, but of course you can also use Git. So here I'm just going to use Mercurial. And what you do is you go into the folder and you initialize a repository. Now, just to tell you, there are, each project already comes with these files that ignore certain files and folders, which I'll explain. If you want to have a Git repository, there's also a Git ignore. It all comes there for you. So you start your repository, and then you can simply add all the files to it. But before I do that, let me show you. You've got here the classes directory. Here is where you would put all your database models and all of your sort of methods to manipulate the models, the data, the database, the state, stuff like that, kind of the back end. You can have PHP classes here, and you can also have Node.js JavaScript classes. They all go in here. Read the guide for more information. Here is where you keep your config. Okay, this is the config that's actually checked into version control. It's a version of your app, all kinds of configurations for your app. This folder is for the web server to store files. Files that have been uploaded, say, by users. Again, we like to encourage communities to be self-sufficient and host their own data, their own videos, not host it with a third party. So out of the box, Qbix helps you to just store your own files. If you like, you can also rejigger it to store it on Amazon or Dropbox or anything else. Okay. The handlers folder, this basically, Qbix is very event-driven. So for example, if somebody visits the welcome page, the My App welcome response content, that thing will, this is how the handlers look. And these basically handle these events. I'll talk about this very briefly. So this is where you put all your event handlers, things like handling HTTP requests and all these kinds of things. Okay, next is local.sample. Now this is a folder that's going to be copied as soon as I do the next step, which I might as well do now. But first I have to tell you about the scripts folder. The scripts is the command line scripts folder. This is where you store all of your command line scripts. Now if you've been noticing, everything in the Qbix platform is namespaced. The namespace is the name of your app or the name of your plugin. If a functionality is introduced by the core of Q, then it's under Q. If it's in every plugin and app, it's accessible to everything. If, for example, the user's plugin decides to introduce some config, it should put it under this namespace. So likewise, everything in the user's plugin, right? For example, all the handlers would be under the user's namespace. And similarly for your app. But here we have all this My App stuff. We want to replace all instances of My App here with Teaching. Okay, so if I search for My App, and I can, for example, search My App, it'll find a lot of instances. And what you want to do, instead of search and replace, is you do the second step, which is you go to scripts/Q, because these are the core scripts. Here, let's just clear the terminal. Okay, so you're in scripts/Q, and now you want to run PHP configure, and then you put the name of your app, in this case, teaching. That will actually set up the app, configure it, and replace all instances of my app with teaching. All right. Check this out. You see where my app used to be? We now have teaching. Everything has been replaced. Okay. So now your app is almost ready to be installed. The next thing you have to do is create a database for this app. Well, actually, it tells you what to do. Edit the config in this app folder. First, I'm going to make a database for this app. So add database, and I'm going to call it teaching. You could call it whatever you like. It's nice to have a database encoding UTF-8, and you know, this is a good collation. Basically, collation refers to how things are compared and stored in the database. So you want to use Unicode typically. So you create this database, and you have to create a user. So you're gonna have, you don't want a root user that has access to all databases. You'd like each app to have its own user to connect to the database. So you do grant all on teaching all tables to, and then you put, let's call this user teaching at localhost, and then we're going to have identified by, then you just have some kind of random password. Okay. Well, didn't seem to like that. But here's a shorter password. It seems to like that. Who knows? All right. Anyway, so now we have the teaching user with this password is able to access this database. Let me copy that password and start to set up the, like it says, the local app JSON file. If you notice, local sample has been copied to local. Now here's the thing. There's one directory that's not going to be checked into version control. When I do this, so if I want to go back to the original app directory and I see all these folders, I can just do hgadd. Or in Git, I can just do git add. And it will add all the files. It will skip some of those files though. Notice it didn't add the local folder. It didn't add most of the folders inside here, inside files. The local folder is ignored because it has all of your credentials on your local machine for your local development environment. So for example, it has the hosts and the ports that you connect locally. It has your credentials for certain APIs and services. This just happens to be there. It also could be Google Places, Google APIs, all kinds of stuff. It has internal secrets, external, so you don't want to check this into version control. There's many instances where people go on GitHub and they see passwords hard-coded into the config. That's why. Don't do that. So this automatically prevents that from happening. Of course, here you've got your database connections. The star is basically things that are common to all database connections. And then these are for individual, you can override things for individual database connections. So the way you connect to your database might be either through a socket, in which you use, in this case you use localhost, or I think in our case we connect through a port, in which case you use an IP. So database name is teaching, the username is teaching, and the password, as I said, is copied. It's from there. Okay, now I have this. I can almost run the installer. One thing I have to do is I have to get rid of this line. Oh, locally I want to be able to actually access this. So I like to host things over here. My computer name on the local network, and then a symbolic link to the app. What that means essentially is if I go here on the Mac, it happens to be that the default web server is here. And then this is the document root. I would like to do a symbolic link to basically this. Sorry. That's where the app was installed. No, wait. It was installed. Yeah, it wasn't. Well, I guess I installed it here. Okay, fine. So then you need to make the symbolic link to the web directory. The web directory is where you have all your public-facing files, like CSS, JavaScript, images, and all these kinds of things. Your front controllers. Now, the thing is, you don't need to have any of this. The Qbix platform lets you pretty much do whatever you like. But again, you're going to be working with other developers, and unless you have a very good reason, you should keep the folder structure that is common to all projects so they can get started quickly and they don't have to ask around and constantly guess where everything is. So over here, it's the web folder, and then you'd make a symbolic link. Let's call it teaching. Oh, permission denied. There's an XKCD comic about this. All right. So, oh, well, that sucks. All right. Well, that's embarrassing. Let's do this. All right. Continuing. We've just created a symbolic link, and let's go back. We can now access our website from here. All right, but it hasn't been installed yet, so it's going to complain. First, it tells you have to edit this local config, and that's because you have to get rid of this. All right, now if I do it, now it tells you please run the installer. It actually kind of coaches you through what you're supposed to do next. So again, you go into scripts queue, and you look through your scripts. You got your install script. The third step you're going to do, or the fourth step, is run the installer. Now you've connected to your database. You've told your app where the database is. You've told your app where the Qbix platform is. You can run the installer. Here's the magic. The installer also fixes permissions on the files folder to allow the web server to write to it. It also fixes permissions on the core platform. So you're right there. And the users plugin that it uses. Now it's installed the users plugin. It's installed a bunch of stuff, a bunch of tables in the database already. You can see them here. They all have a prefix of users. That prefix comes from over here. See, you can have many database connections on the same database. So now you've got the streams plugin. The streams plugin depends on the users plugin, so it's installed next. You can read more about these in the guide. Okay, now it's about to install our app. Oh, it's already installed. Okay, there, it's installed the users plugin, the streams plugin, and then our app. Important things to keep in mind is that here's the table. Here are all the tables it's installed. Each plugin kind of answers for itself. It's also got these tables that keep track of pretty much what's been installed where. Okay, so now that your app has been installed, you can just refresh this, and boom, step right up. You could use this app. If I refresh it a few more times, you'll see this number go down. So that's the Qbix platform is pretty efficient. Actually, if you include it like a library, it's even more efficient. Okay, and this is on my Mac. You can get this even faster if you turn on caching and all this kind of stuff. So yeah, Qbix platform is pretty resource light compared to many other frameworks. So I think you're going to love it. Okay. By the way, here's how you can include it as a library. You just simply include this and then go to town. Do whatever you like. The whole environment is there for you. You just do that. So essentially what we've got here is a way, if you're used to just putting naked PHP scripts, in your web directory, you can do that. And you could just include the Qbix platform And everything is fast, as I said. You could reload this a bunch of times, and it can, oh look, 54 milliseconds, 45. Anyway, that's what you could do. You could have naked PHP scripts. But what normally happens, like with many other frameworks, is that in Qbix, certain events happen. The platform takes care of everything. It fires the events. Then it calls your handlers, and then you write handlers to handle those events, the events that you want to handle, and basically return the content that you would like to render or take the action you want to do. So, for example, let's go back. Let's say this welcome page is rendered, right? So every time we refresh, every time we render this welcome page, what happens is the following. At some point, Qbix processes the request and it calls the following event: teaching, that's the name of your app; welcome, that's the name of the action; response, this is come time to render a response; and content. So as you can see, content is actually the name of a slot that you can fill. I'll talk about slots and things in the future tutorial. Of course, all this is customizable. You don't need to call it content. But the main thing is this. Look at the function name. It loads basically a function named exactly after the event, right? Except instead of slashes, it has underscores. It's the same in Windows. It's the same in Mac and everything. So we've got teaching, welcome, response, content, teaching, welcome, response, content. Essentially, Qbix finds your file in the cascading file system, right? Then it loads it, looks for the function, and executes it, and passes maybe some parameters. So, okay, look what it does. For example, to render this content over here. It's simply, this is your front controller, okay? This is your controller to do something. So you might, set some variables. Here it adds a JavaScript to the page. Okay, so the page will include that JavaScript. And then it renders a view. The view is this, and it passes these variables to the view. So actually the views folder is the last one I didn't really speak about, so let me just quickly talk about it. The views folder contains templates that you can render, that you could use when you're rendering stuff. They could be PHP templates, or if you want to, be more safe, you could have handlebars templates. Qbix supports either one, and you can even add your own favorite template engine. It's pretty easy with Qbix, but you probably want to stick to the ones that come with Qbix because other people will know them and use them. So, again, how does it work? Well, you've got your namespace, right? Within that, you've got templates for the content slot, including the welcome page, which we're going to look at. You also got like not found, 404 page. There's other things, there's emails you could be sending, templates for transactional emails, templates for sending SMS, different layouts. These are views too, for desktop, mobile, tablet. But let's focus. So here's the welcome page, and that's where the content is for this thing. See, there's not a lot of magic going on. Now remember that you passed, one of these variables. Pass these variables here, so you could take one of them and they're available here. You can just echo them. So if I refresh the page or click this tab, click this link, you see it kind of reloads the page. Actually with Ajax, I'll explain that one later. And loads this. Okay, well, obviously when you're echoing something and there's HTML tags over here, it's going to render the HTML tag, which is usually not what you want. Of course, Qbix has all these facilities to escape it. Now, everything in Qbix is pretty much named exactly how, the minimal thing that you would want to do to express yourself. So if you want to add a script to the response, well, then you add a script to the response. Everything is supposed to be as easy to express yourself as possible. One other thing I want to tell you is that everything works out of the box with Qbix. When you build your own tools, and you want to have other people take your plugin, put your tools into plugins, and you give them to others. You want people to be able to just plop them on a page and have them just work out of the box. That's very important because the whole point of Qbix is it's smart. It's for communities to be able to install, even if they don't know the internals of a particular tool, even if they don't have a developer. They should be able to just have an HTML designer, just make a few pages, put a chat room on it, and that chat room would actually the chat room. See, this thing was escaped properly this time. The chat room would simply take care of itself, both on the front and the back end. The chat room would render new messages as they're coming in. It would save messages on the server in the right order. It would multicast these messages to everyone in the chat room online, and it would even send notifications to people either on email or SMS. And it would use these templates, and people would get it maybe even on their mobile phone, native notifications through a native app. Qbix takes care of all of it, so you don't have to sit there reinventing the wheel every time. You just learn how Qbix works, and you build your chat room, and everything just works. That's the key. If everything just works and you build your thing that just works on top of it, then the whole overall thing just works. So for example, here's a tabs control. It's a tabs tool, rather we call it tools. So, it just works out of the box. It detects what page you're on, and it works with the Ajax system to just load things. What is cool though is that Qbix, of course, these days you got to be on mobile phones. It also works here. So here's a simulator of a mobile phone using Apple's simulator. This is an old page. I'm reloading. So you see this tabs tool, right? When I say it just works, I mean it really just works. Like in every environment, depending on the width, it will jigger itself to be, to look good. So if you think this just works, check this out. By the way, notice it could be really fast, even the inversion of control. So turns out you can just create users already in the database, and you'll see them actually pop up in this table right here. Okay? Right now you've got the initial user, which is the app itself, and it's named after the app. So let me create a user right now. So for your apps, you'd probably want to go into the local folder, into the local config, and you'd want to sign up with some kind of provider to send emails. You might want to sign up with Twilio as well to send SMSs. As soon as you do, and you just put the information here, right, it just works out of the box. So, but even without doing this, it'll use kind of the development version of that. It will pretend to send emails, and you could see it here. So for example, let's just do a fake email. Actually, let's do a fake mobile number. You can even use a phone mobile number like this. Okay, 234 5678. Okay, go. Okay, now you put your name. So in this case, I'll put, let's say, my name. So I didn't click accept terms of service. I pressed enter, and it asked me, okay, yeah. So now it's actually just creating a user in the database, and boom, that's me with a default avatar. Of course, you can make other default avatars, but I'll shut up now about that. You see how it tells you like, hey, please set up the transport in Twilio, as in the docs, because it's faked it. It's created the account, but it hasn't sent the SMS because there's nowhere to send. So here's a new user that popped into the database. Here's a session ID. User signed in once. There's a lot of other things here. User hasn't set up a passphrase. It's pending. The mobile number is pending. Okay. So what does that mean? Well, that means that we don't know if you really own this phone number. It could be that some other user comes along and decides to log in. And look, by the way, the interface works differently on the mobile phone. So you've got here So let's say this guy has a completely different number. He's got like, I don't know, 347, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Nope. Let's say, sorry, scratch that. Let's say he's got the exact same number. Look what happens. Remember, this guy, Greg, me, I didn't confirm this number. So maybe I'm just the guy that just entered this number, right? And so this new person, let's say this person really got, finally they come and that's their number. Did you try to register this number before? If so, check your SMS to activate your account. Notice all this works outside the box, right? You can either get that old account back, which is this, if that's really you, or you say, no, that wasn't me. I'm just going to create a new account. So let's say you're Bob Saget. And Bob, if you're watching this, you know what to do. All right. So Bob accepted the terms. And Bob is now in. Notice, here's Greg, here's Bob, right? And so now who has the right account? Well, if it's, let's say, I don't know, Greg, okay, I have the right account. I'm going to actually confirm this. So then Bob, so he doesn't lose his account, has to enter something else like Bob, whatever. And then it sends an activation message to that email. Thankfully, it won't do that right now because you need to set up the SMTP. But isn't this cool? You have an app right now, a web app that works on the mobile, it works on desktop, it works everywhere. And, it can even work in any orientation and whatever. It just works. And basically, out of the box, again, everything is supposed to work out of the box for these communities. Your app can literally be installed with the installer. You can have their versioning. Go read the guide on how to do all that. I'll show one last thing, and then if you have any questions, like Bob Saget, you know what to do. But yeah, play around with the Qbix platform. Check it out yourself. Just to show you what's going on in the database, by the way. You've got here myself. You've got here Bob Saget. So one of you will get an SMS with the actual code. And, all of these are pending. Let's say I am the one that gets, the link would actually be something like this. And then I would have to put a code. The code comes from this table. And so activation code. Okay, I'll just kind of copy that here. That would have been the link. All right. Well, let's do that. Let's log out. After all, I think Bob, that's Bob's code, you see. So fine, Bob. It's you that will get this. So then, it starts out like this. These suggestions are actually taken from your random Yahoo News articles. There's 3 words. That's why we want to have people choose passphrases that are secure. So instead of a password, people would just choose password, a lot of them. We're trying our best to get people to actually think of something that is, there's millions, billions of combinations, and yet something easy to remember. So for example, the website at. Yeah, that's pretty good. The website at. And if we can't reach Yahoo, it actually generates a bunch of nonsensical 3-word phrases like 5-word, like my shoe ate your dog. Anyway, activate my account. Boom. So now I'm Bob. I have my account and it's now confirmed in there. Where is this? Okay. So now the state of this is active. It's no longer unverified. And if I look at Bob's account, lucky Bob, signed in twice, and look, he's got that mobile number. You see? Email address is still pending, though. Good luck on that one, Bob. Okay. I have a feeling I should reach out to Bob Saget after this tutorial. Okay, so that's basically the idea. Qbix handles everything, logging in, logging out, emails, SMS. It handles data, it handles access. I mean, go read the guide. I'll end the tutorial here. There's a lot more that I could show. Oh, okay, fine. I want to show one last thing. Sorry. We're over here. Let me show Files Q. This directory is going to be important because it has the logs. Okay? You sometimes want to log things, and your app out of the box has a hook that just happens to log things. You know, when you're ready, take out the logging because it's a bottleneck for your app. But for now, in your teaching app, you have handlers, and then you're going to have teaching after configure. It just happens that this hook runs every time the configuration has been loaded, okay? Every time the configure has been finished, it does this. It adds some more hooks to the config. And the hook basically says, call this function whenever this event occurs. See, Q is very event-driven. So here is db query execute. Whenever you've got a db query that executes, then after that, you're going to call, see, this function here, okay? And in this case, the function is already defined, so it's not going to open the file. It's already there. Yeah, so it kind of just, you know, begin, and it kind of just commit. It tells you what happened. It's very useful for this. If I do tail f teaching.log, it actually shows you all the SQL queries that were done. So for example, if I had just done right now, you know, leave some space, go back to the page, whoa, it did some queries. It actually tries to, let's say, see if your name changed or anything. Any of those streams changed. Go and read about streams. It's intelligent. If your name changed in some other window, some other guy did something in some other thing, and you open your app again, right? If you go back to your phone and like you open your app, it will actually just update that chat room. So again, it works out of the box. But you know, if I do a request, like if I reload the welcome page, you can see it actually do these requests. Served response for teaching home, right? And this was the request. And it did a select, it, you know, checked which user, got the user from the database. It selected, it sees what streams you're participating in, and one other thing, right? And then it renders the page. So it tries to be as efficient as possible as well. So I wanted to show you this, and there's also, if I show you email log, it actually shows all the emails that have been sent. So it says would have sent message to Bob, but it didn't, Bob, it didn't send because you don't have SMTP set up. But it would have sent this message. So it's kind of cool. You could see in the logs all the emails being sent out, make sure it works. Finally, when you're done and you want to make your app live, you don't delete this. You actually set a config to false, right? DB logging true. So this is the default. And I'm going to set this to false. So let's say in this local, where is it? Local app JSON, right? On this environment, I am going to put okay, here we go. DB logging false. And from now on, when I execute things, it's going to log now only the network requests. See? It still logs that post, but it doesn't show anymore the SQL. All right. If you understood all the terms I used in this tutorial, congrats. You probably spent many, many years studying computers, and now it's going to pay off. Really, try this, and you can make exciting apps, change the world, and if you have a nice idea, make a prototype. Show us what you did. clean up the code, and contact us. There is a good chance that, at least in the early stages, we'll actually put your app into our app store, or we'll promote it to all of our millions of users if it's good. We'll start with 1,000, see how that goes, collect some metrics, and go from there. If you like this tutorial, or if you have some comments, you know what to do. Bob Saget, call me. Thanks.